You're listening to the Mark Bradford Alchemy for Life podcast.
Do you overcommunicate? Because I certainly will. Wait, I might. Look, it depends on... Hey there, welcome back. It's been a little bit. And it's been a little bit because I've been doing some exploring, changing, retooling of things, and experimenting. But Mark, you say, you're always doing those things. Well, yes, that's true. And that sort of is the heart of a podcast like this, right? Where we live life as a scientist. But the changing and retooling and that stuff that I've been doing is mostly been related to the way and the kind of media I produce. And I do produce a number of forms of media. I just wanted to say that correctly. I create physical books, audiobooks. I have a podcast, and in the past had experimented with video. And one of the things I've been doing more of is creating little video shorts for YouTube and creating little video vignettes for Instagram and so forth. And those have essentially taken the place temporarily as part of the retooling of the podcast. The podcasts that I do are only 10 minutes long unless I interview someone. And I know I've said that a million times, but there are those out there who don't understand how short the podcast is. I have been vehement and adamant about keeping the podcast short. And that is sometimes to my dismay, where I have a fairly expansive subject I want to discuss. And I can't because I run up against my self-imposed 10-minute rule. And sometimes I leak past that a little bit and go to 11 minutes, 12 minutes, and then I apologize profusely at the end. No one ever complains that I went over. No one ever says, geez, why is it so long? But I do that for a reason, because it forces me to be succinct, which sometimes is a difficult thing for people to do. It's difficult for anyone. It's difficult for me. So I have a few perspectives on the succinctness of the video I produce. So I want to give you a couple observations. So first of all, when I started making these video series that I've been posting, and do check them out, you might find them hilarious and easy on the eyes. But when I started producing them, they became much, much shorter. I mean, these were 30 seconds, 1 minute, 3 minutes. So something as short as 5 minutes seemed really long. And that was an odd perception. That was an odd thing to discover, that here I am running into this wall as I speak to you, but half of that time, or even a third of that time, seems way too long when I'm doing it via video. That's something to think about. I mean, in the interim, I was also commissioned to write a story for someone that was going to be used in a certain kind of production. And the way that I understood its use, and trust me, I asked lots of probing questions, told me it had to be a certain size. So the interesting outcome, there's a couple interesting outcomes. First of all, the person loved it, and they complimented me once again and said I was a really good writer. Or rather, here's the telling thing. Someone could use all sorts of adjectives and go and praise you up and down about your writing and this and that and the other thing. But the thing that really hits you is when they say, you're a good writer. Like, if that's the only word they use, if like they come up with just kind of that pause and they inhale, and obviously you can't see the pause and the inhale in a text or in an email, but you can kind of feel it, right? So when they say you're a good writer, then it somehow sounds more sincere. So I received that compliment for writing the story, and the entity that contracted me to create the story also had complimented me in the past and said that they wanted to hire me because I had the unique ability to say something in just a couple sentences, and that they struggled to do it even though they were in the media industry. And I've thought of that as a high compliment. But that gets back to being succinct. Like, so isn't that a compliment on being succinct? So then why am I beating myself up for not being succinct enough? And I guess it's because it's an ongoing struggle. And it kind of gets back to when you create stuff and you look at it again and again and again, you become so familiar with it that you want to continue distilling it, or you want to make sure that you're telling the proper story. Aha. And that gets back to overtelling your story, over-communicating, which most people, if given the opportunity, they would err on the side of over-communicating. Well, look, I just want to tell them enough, right? I want to make sure that I didn't leave out anything, you know? And it's one of those many paradoxes in life, and it's the paradox of communication. The paradox of succinctness is that if you tell them too much, you'll lose them. Well, how can you possibly lose someone when you've given them even more tools to use to buy your product or understand who you are or why you're sorry? You know what I mean? I mean, anything and everything that way. And it's because people's brains on the receiving end can only receive so much, and it starts to turn into noise. It's sort of like saying, you know, here's 3 words. Now zoom in as far as you can on these 3 words. They occupy your entire peripheral, right? Your entire visual area is occupied by 3 words. I love you, right? Aw. No, I meant that as an example. And now if you say, oh, I need to add some more words. So you add a couple more words, and this is why, and this and blah, 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 blah. And you put, well, now you have to zoom out, right? You zoom out so that there's more room for the words. Oh, well, if I'm going to tell you that, I should probably sort of specify what I really mean by that. Look, I don't mean this, but I mean this. And you zoom out more, and you zoom out more, and you zoom out more. And finally, you're zoomed way, way out, and all the words are so tiny. You barely read any of the words, and they all look the same. I mean, that's kind of a visual way to think about over communication. I mean, the other way to do it is to like think of it as like a linear thing, right? Just like this podcast. This podcast is linear. You listen to it from the start to the finish. Hopefully. Thank you very much. Like, share, subscribe, rate. And if you see that the podcast is 2.5 hours, you're going to roll your eyes and go, okay, fine. And you're going to play a little bit of it, and you're going to skip ahead, and you're going to skip ahead 2 minutes and goes, this guy's still rambling about the same thing 12 minutes into it. But if you see that it's only 7 minutes long or 10 minutes long, or I try to guarantee that it's 10 minutes long, you may say, well, okay, even if it's not great points or something, I'm still going to listen to it because it's only going to take a certain amount of my time. So that's kind of how the human brain perceives succinctness or lack thereof, right? Succinctivity? Now I'm just making stuff up. So I'm telling you this because our innate reactions, our gut reaction, our intuition, our first voice tells us to make sure that we give someone a clear communication. And then our second voice kicks in and goes, well, you know what happened last time? You know what happened with this? You know, your father always did this, and your sister, and blah, 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 and your ex-wife. Oh, dear. Now you've communicated a mess to somebody because the second voice kicked in. Now, what I think is helpful second voice. And if you don't know what I'm talking about with first and second voices, it's not because I'm crazy. It's because I detail all the stuff in my book, 3 Voices. Check it out and all the links that I normally provide. So what can we do to become more succinct? Well, here's the one you hear way too often. You can become more mindful of it. Oh, God, there's that word again. There's that word that doesn't mean anything. I don't know. Okay, now I'm more mindful. Yay. What it means, at least in this discussion, is take a breath, take a step back, and just go, what do I really want to say? What am I afraid of not conveying? Let me just convey my point to the person I'm trying to convey it to, and then leave it at that and not try to take control of or assume the way that they read and absorb and so forth. And that's a big one. And the interesting thing about that is I learned that early as a writer, but the rest of me took a while to catch up. When the rest of my kinds of communications and dealings with human beings, but when it came to writing, I'm like, here's my point. So again, for homework, I would say if you feel like you're over communicating to people, if you feel like you write them this big long email and you're not getting the answer back, it's probably because you asked them 7 questions. Just keep it to one question, keep it to one point, and just let it follow its course. And I know when you're hyper-vigilant or you over-communicate or you're hyper-perceptive, you tend to try to think out everything, but you can't think for the other humans. You just can't. So hopefully this was helpful. As always, let me know. I would say let me know in the comments, but there's no comments on this. Oh, there's reviews, I think, if you're seeing this as a podcast. Anyway, let me know. Always appreciate the feedback. If you're listening to this in a timely manner and it's early May of 2023, I am currently accepting pre-readers for The Devil's in the Details. So they're not ARC readers because it's actually, the book is all set, but it's for people to actually get the book, read it, fire up a review, and possibly win a paperback copy. So take care of yourself, and I look forward to speaking to you next time. Hey there, thanks for listening. You know I always appreciate your feedback. Please keep it coming. 3 Voices is out. It's a fun read at only $9.99 US on Amazon. And as of this recording, it reached number 3 in experimental psychology. So thank you so much.